There are places where silence holds secrets, where ancient stones whisper stories that history forgot to write down. Tonight, as the world grows quiet around you, we journey to lands where dragons once walked among mortals, where the very earth remembers what we have chosen to forget. Deep in the heart of Southeast Asia, beneath layers of jungle and time, lie mysteries that challenge everything we thought we knew about the past. Temples that shouldn't exist, stone carvings that predate known civilization, underground chambers that hum with frequencies older than language itself. The Vietnamese call it the land of the ascending dragon. But what if that wasn't just poetry? What if something extraordinary once flourished here? Something so advanced that its echoes still ripple through the mist-covered mountains and ancient river valleys. Before you settle into comfort tonight, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if these mysteries speak to you. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Because somewhere, in another time, someone might have stood on this same earth, looking up at these same stars, carrying knowledge we're only now beginning to rediscover. The silence isn't empty. It's waiting. And tonight, we listen to what the dragon lands remember. There are moments when the past seems to exhale. Standing among the weathered ruins scattered across Vietnam's ancient landscape, you can almost feel it, a presence lingering in stones that refuse to speak their secrets. The morning mist clings to crumbling walls at Awakens, where merchant ships once sailed inland rivers that have long since changed their course. In these quiet places, time feels fractured, as if entire centuries have simply vanished from memory. Vietnamese history, as taught in textbooks, begins with the legendary Hung kings around the 3rd millennium BCE. But archaeologist Dr. Mai Linh Nguyen has spent the last decade unearthing evidence that suggests something far more complex. Her team's discoveries at the ancient port of Awakens reveal sophisticated hydraulic systems, advanced metallurgy, and Sanskrit inscriptions that predate accepted timelines by centuries. We're not just finding older artifacts, she explained during our interview at her field site near An Giang province. We're finding evidence of knowledge that shouldn't have existed yet. This is what historians quietly call the phantom time hypothesis of Southeast Asian chronology. Entire civilizations seem to appear and disappear from the record without explanation. The Sa Huyn culture, with their intricate burial jars and mysterious glass beads, flourished along the Central Coast for over a millennium, then simply faded into archaeological silence. No conquest, no natural disaster, just an inexplicable transition into something else entirely. Recent excavations have only deepened the mystery. At Cat Tien National Park, where ancient temple foundations emerge from jungle soil, carbon dating reveals construction techniques that shouldn't have existed in the supposed time frame. The precision of stone cutting, the sophisticated drainage systems, the astronomical alignments all point to knowledge that exceeds what historians attributed to these early communities. Professor Tran Van Hai of Ho Chi Minh City Archaeological Institute describes it as finding a smartphone in a medieval grave. The gaps in Vietnamese historical records aren't accidental, they're systematic, as if entire chapters have been deliberately edited out of the story. French colonial scholars, eager to portray themselves as civilizing influences, often dismissed or destroyed evidence of advanced pre-colonial societies. What survived the colonial period faced further erosion during decades of warfare. Libraries burned, monuments crumbled, and oral traditions died with their keepers. Yet the earth remembers what archives forget. Every monsoon season reveals new fragments, pottery shards that don't match known styles, tools made from alloys that required sophisticated metallurgy, inscriptions in scripts that predate known writing systems by centuries. At Gothop Temple Complex in Anjiang, archaeologist Dr. Lei Ming An has documented what she calls temporal anomalies, layers of construction that defy conventional dating methods. Beneath the official 7th century foundations lie older structures built with such precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate the techniques. The stones fit together without mortar, each block weighing several tons, cut to tolerances measured in millimeters. We're looking at technology that appears and disappears from the archaeological record, Dr. Lei explained, running her fingers along joints so tight that paper cannot slide between them. It's as if advanced knowledge was available for brief periods, then lost again. The pattern repeats across the Mekong Delta region. At every major archaeological site, beneath the documented history lies evidence of something older, more sophisticated, more mysterious. Bronze artifacts that show traces of elements not found locally. Stone carvings that display astronomical knowledge requiring centuries of careful observation. Water management systems that channeled seasonal floods with mathematical precision that suggests intimate understanding of hydrology and engineering principles. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery came in 2019, when ground-penetrating radar revealed vast underground chambers beneath the ancient citadel at Hoa Lu. Dr. Pham Thanh Huong, leading the survey team, found geometric patterns that extend far beyond the visible ruins. The underground architecture is more complex than what we see above ground, she reported. It's as if the visible structures were just the tip of something much larger, much older. When core samples were taken, they revealed construction materials that don't match the geological composition of the surrounding area. Someone transported these stones from distant mountains, using methods that remain unexplained. The question haunts every archaeologist working in Vietnam today. If the official history begins with the Hung kings, who built these earlier monuments? Who possessed the knowledge to align temples with celestial events, to engineer water systems that still function after millennia, to cut stone with precision that challenges modern machinery? The deeper they dig, the more complex the picture becomes. Each answer spawns 10 new questions, and each new question pushes the origins of Vietnamese civilization further back into the mists of time. But stone and earth are patient teachers. They hold their secrets until we learn the right questions to ask. Sometimes truth hides not in words, but in the texture of stone. In the quiet defiance of something that should not be there, yet is. Beneath the ruins and under the patient sky, there are blocks of granite and sandstone carved with such precision that even the finest steel of our age trembles before them. How could hands supposedly primitive shape the unshapeable? What memory guided their chisels? What lost understanding whispered in their geometry? At the ancient Cham towers of Po Nagar, rising like prayers from the coastal hills of Nha Trang, archaeologist Dr. Nguyen Thu Ha runs her measuring tools along joints that defy explanation. The massive sandstone blocks, some weighing over 15 tons, fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. No mortar binds them, yet after 1,000 years of monsoons and salt air, the walls stand as solid as the day they were completed. Modern construction cranes would struggle to position these stones, Dr. Nguyen explains, her voice carrying a note of professional bewilderment. Yet somehow, the Cham builders of the 8th century managed it with tools we assume were primitive. The mystery deepens when you examine the cutting techniques. Under microscopic analysis, the stone surfaces show tool marks consistent with diamond-tipped precision instruments. The corners are perfect right angles. The decorative carvings flow seamlessly into the structural elements, as if the entire tower was conceived as a single, massive sculpture rather than assembled blocks. Engineer Vo Min Tan, who has spent years studying Cham architecture, describes it as impossible mathematics made manifest in stone. Further south, at the Mai Sun Temple complex, the enigma multiplies. Here, in the mist-shrouded valleys of Quang Nam province, stand the remains of what may be Vietnam's most sophisticated ancient engineering achievement. The red brick towers, built between the 4th and 14th centuries, display construction techniques that modern builders struggle to understand. Dr. Tran Ki Phuong, head of the Mai Sun Restoration Project, points to walls where individual bricks have been fitted. So, precisely that the joints are virtually invisible. The bricks were fired to different temperatures to achieve exact thermal expansion coefficients, she explains. This level of materials science shouldn't have existed in medieval Southeast Asia. But perhaps most puzzling are the massive foundation stones that support these brick structures. Blocks of granite weighing up to 20 tons, transported from quarries over 50 kilometers away through dense jungle terrain. The logistics alone boggle the mind. How do you move a 20-ton block of granite through mountainous jungle using pre-industrial technology? And once moved, how do you position it with the millimeter precision evident in the foundations? Geological surveys conducted by Dr. Lê Văn Hung reveal another layer of mystery. Core samples taken from the foundation stones show magnetic alignments that don't match the current orientation of Earth's magnetic field. These stones were quarried, shaped, and positioned when the magnetic north was in a different location. Dr. Lê explains, pointing to compass readings that deviate significantly from expected norms. This suggests the foundations are far older than the brick structures built upon them. We may be looking at construction that spans millennia, not centuries. Even more intriguing are the acoustic properties of these ancient sites. When Dr. Phan Thi Mai, an acoustic engineer from Hanoi University of Technology, conducted sound tests at Po Nagar, she discovered that certain chambers amplify human voice frequencies in ways that suggest deliberate design. The resonance patterns create standing waves at frequencies known to induce meditative states, she reports. These aren't accidental features. Someone understood the relationship between architecture and human consciousness. The same acoustic engineering appears at Mai Sun, where specific chanting frequencies cause the brick walls to vibrate sympathetically, creating an almost otherworldly harmonic effect that visitors describe as both haunting and deeply peaceful. Modern engineers studying these sites face an uncomfortable conclusion. The precision, the logistics, the advanced understanding of materials, science, acoustics, and even human psychology embedded in these structures exceeds what should have been possible with the technology attributed to their builders. Dr. Hoang Minh Duc, who leads Vietnam's National University Engineering Analysis team, puts it bluntly. We're reverse engineering techniques we don't fully understand, using tools more advanced than what supposedly created them. The implications ripple through everything we thought we knew about technological development in ancient Southeast Asia. But stones are only part of the story. These monuments weren't built in isolation. They were positioned with deliberate intention, their placement following patterns that extend far beyond individual architectural achievements. When you step back and view these sites from above, a larger design emerges, one that speaks not just to advanced engineering, but to sophisticated knowledge of the cosmos itself. The stones, it seems, were always meant to be read as part of something much greater. The stars have always been watching. Long before ink met parchment, before words were trapped in stone, the sky was the first library, and we were its readers. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to read. We began to see the constellations as decoration, not instruction, as poetry, not geometry. Yet the ancients, whoever they truly were, left their questions carved not in paper, but in alignment, monumental markers that whisper to the heavens. What if the sky remembers what the earth has lost? Across the mist-covered mountains and ancient river valleys of Vietnam, monuments gaze upward in deliberate harmony with celestial bodies. At the Temple of Literature in Hanoi, the oldest university in Vietnam, astronomer Dr. Giang Vu Tuan An has spent years mapping the precise orientations of its courtyards and pavilions. His findings challenge conventional understanding of medieval Vietnamese astronomy. The entire complex functions as a massive sundial, he explains, gesturing toward stone tablets that cast shadows in perfect alignment with the winter solstice. But more than that, it tracks the precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000-year cycle that requires centuries of careful observation to understand. The precision is mathematical, not approximate. When Dr. Zhang's team used modern surveying equipment to measure the angles between various structures, they discovered orientations accurate to fractions of degrees. The main ceremonial halls align with the rising of specific stars that held significance in ancient Vietnamese cosmology. During certain times of the year, starlight streams through carefully positioned windows to illuminate particular stone inscriptions, creating a calendar written in light and shadow. Further north, at the ancient citadel of Ko Loa, archaeoastronomer Dr. Pham Thu Thao has documented even more sophisticated celestial alignments. The concentric earthworks, traditionally attributed to military defense, reveal patterns that mirror the constellation known to the Vietnamese as Bac Jiao, the Northern Dipper. When you map the fortification walls from above, they correspond precisely to the star positions during the autumn equinox of approximately 2,500 years ago, Dr. Pham explains, overlaying star charts onto aerial photographs of the site. This wasn't defensive architecture, it was cosmic architecture. The implications are staggering. Such precise astronomical knowledge requires not just observation, but mathematical understanding of celestial mechanics that supposedly didn't develop in Southeast Asia until much later periods. Yet here it is, embedded in earthworks older than the Han Dynasty, demonstrating that ancient Vietnamese astronomers possessed sophisticated knowledge of stellar precession, seasonal cycles, and the relationship between terrestrial and celestial geometry. The very landscape had been transformed into a mirror of the heavens, a three-dimensional map of cosmic order that functioned as both temple and observatory. The astronomical sophistication extends beyond individual monuments to encompass entire regional networks. Dr. Ly Thanh Nam, director of Vietnam's National Observatory, has identified what he calls celestial corridors connecting major ancient sites across northern Vietnam. When plotted on maps, these alignments correspond to significant astronomical events, lunar standstills, planetary conjunctions, and the rising points of stars that marked crucial agricultural seasons. The ancient Vietnamese didn't just observe the sky, Dr. Ly notes. They recreated its geometry on Earth, building a landscape-scale instrument for tracking cosmic time. Perhaps most remarkably, recent analysis of bronze artifacts from the Joseon period reveals intricate engravings that function as portable star charts. The famous bronze drums, long interpreted as purely ceremonial objects, contain spiral patterns that map lunar cycles with mathematical precision. When archaeologist Dr. Bui Minh Triet used computer modeling to reconstruct the sky, as it would have appeared 2,500 years ago, the drum patterns aligned perfectly with the phases of the moon and the movements of Venus, demonstrating that these weren't decorative motifs, but sophisticated astronomical calculators. The ancient Vietnamese lunar calendar, still used today for traditional festivals, reveals layers of astronomical knowledge that extend far beyond simple timekeeping. Dr. Ngoti Lan, a specialist in traditional calendrical systems, has discovered that the intercalation methods used to synchronize lunar and solar years require understanding of mathematical concepts that weren't supposedly developed until much later periods. The traditional Vietnamese calendar incorporates corrections for the precession of lunar nodes, she explains. This level of mathematical astronomy suggests a continuous tradition of observation spanning many centuries, possibly millennia. Every temple, every drum, every carefully positioned stone tells the same story. Ancient Vietnamese civilization possessed astronomical knowledge that rivals our modern understanding, embedded in monuments that continue to mark time with mechanical precision. But if these builders could map the heavens with such accuracy, what else might they have known? What other knowledge might lie buried not in tombs or temples, but beneath the waters that once witnessed the rise and fall of their great cities? The stars above remember, but so do the depths below. If the land remembers in ruins, then the sea remembers in silence. Beneath its shifting skin lies a library of stone, 1,000 cities drowned and forgotten. The surface glitters with light and wind, but below it, in the slow, cold dark, there are walls, temples, roads, and dreams. We think of history as written on dry land, yet most of humanity's memory is locked away beneath the waves, sealed not by time, but by water. And water, unlike fire, preserves what it consumes. There are places divers whisper about in half-truths and blurred photographs. Off the coast of Ha Long Bay, marine archaeologist Dr. Vu Tan Son has spent 15 years mapping what sonar reveals as geometric anomalies on the seafloor. His team's underwater surveys have documented stone formations that stretch for kilometers beneath the emerald waters. We're finding evidence of human construction at depths that would have been dry land 12,000 years ago, Dr. Vu explains, reviewing sonar images that show unmistakably artificial patterns. Straight lines, right angles, circular formations. Nature doesn't create geometry like this. The official position remains cautious. Vietnam's Institute of Maritime Studies acknowledges the discoveries, but emphasizes the need for more extensive investigation before drawing conclusions. Dr. Hoang Thi Minh, the Institute's director, points to natural geological processes that can create seemingly artificial structures. Erosion patterns, sedimentary layering, and tectonic activity can produce formations that appear constructed, she notes. We must be extremely careful not to see patterns where none exist. Yet the evidence continues to accumulate. In 2018, a joint expedition between Vietnamese and international researchers using advanced sonar mapping technology documented what appears to be a vast submerged complex near Cat Ba Island. The structures, lying 40 meters below the current sea level, span an area of nearly 10 square kilometers. Marine geologist Dr. Le Quang Hiep, who participated in the survey, describes formations that include what appear to be terraced platforms, circular enclosures, and connecting pathways. The regularity is striking, he admits. If these are natural formations, they represent geological processes we don't fully understand. More troubling for skeptics are the artifacts recovered from these depths. Pottery fragments, carved stone pieces, and metal objects have been brought up from the same areas where the geometric formations are found. Carbon dating of organic materials embedded in these artifacts suggests human activity dating back approximately 8,000 years, a time when global sea levels were significantly lower. Dr. Pham Vun Long, leading the artifact analysis team, faces a puzzling contradiction. We have clear evidence of human habitation at depths that should have been underwater for millennia. The Great Melt was not gentle. Around 12,000 years ago, The last ice age ended with dramatic warming. The massive ice sheets covering much of the northern hemisphere began their final collapse, releasing unimaginable volumes of meltwater into the world's oceans. Sea levels rose more than 120 meters over several millennia, drowning vast coastal plains that had been home to early human settlements. Climatologist Dr. Nguyen Thi Hong has reconstructed what the South China Sea coastline would have looked like during this period. The entire continental shelf was exposed land, she explains, pointing to bathymetric maps. What we now call Ha Long Bay was an inland valley system. The Pearl River flowed through areas that are now 60 meters underwater. If early Vietnamese coastal civilizations existed on these exposed lands, their cities would have been gradually submerged as the ice melted. Unlike the violent destruction of war or natural disaster, this would have been a slow drowning, perhaps taking place over generations. Some settlements might have been abandoned and relocated inland, but others, particularly those in lower-lying areas, would simply have disappeared beneath the rising waters. The flood myths preserved in Vietnamese folklore may carry echoes of this ancient catastrophe. Stories of great inundations, of cities swallowed by the sea, appear throughout Southeast Asian oral traditions. The legend of Long Vuong, the Dragon King who controls the waters, might preserve cultural memory of a time when the sea reclaimed vast territories. Even the creation myth of Oko and Lac Long Quan, with its emphasis on the division between mountain and sea peoples, could reflect the displacement of coastal populations by rising waters. Modern technology offers new hope for resolving these mysteries. Advanced underwater robotics, high-resolution sonar mapping, and improved diving capabilities make it possible to explore these submerged sites with unprecedented detail. Dr. Tran Minh Duc, Vietnam's leading underwater archaeologist, believes we stand on the threshold of revolutionary discoveries. Every year, our instruments become more sophisticated, he notes. What the sea has hidden, technology may finally reveal. Yet questions linger. If these formations are indeed the remains of ancient cities, what kind of civilization built them? What knowledge did they possess? And perhaps most intriguingly, what other secrets might their descendants have carried inland, preserving them in ways we're only beginning to understand? Before words were written, they were sung. Long before alphabets or tablets, language itself was sacred, a rhythm that bound thought to breath, breath to meaning, and meaning to memory. Somewhere in the deep past, humans began to speak not only to each other, but to the cosmos. Our first scripts, carved or pressed into stone, were not merely records. They were echoes of something much older, a memory of sound made visible. And when we look closely at those earliest marks found in Vietnam, we see something strange. They appear suddenly, complete, as though inherited rather than invented. The Chu Nom writing system, Vietnam's indigenous script, that flourished for over a millennium, presents linguists with an enduring puzzle. Unlike the gradual evolution seen in most writing systems, Nom appears in historical records already sophisticated, capable of expressing complex philosophical and poetic concepts. Dr. Zhou Thi Lan, Vietnam's leading expert on historical linguistics, has spent decades studying the earliest Nom manuscripts. What we're seeing isn't the development of writing, she explains from her research center at the Institute of Literature. It's the documentation of a system that already existed in mature form. The question is, where did it come from? Even more intriguing are the bronze drum inscriptions from the Joseon period, some dating back 2,500 years. These aren't random decorative marks, but appear to follow consistent patterns that suggest structured communication. The spirals and geometric forms carved into the bronze surfaces bear striking resemblances to writing systems found in distant cultures that supposedly had no contact with ancient Vietnam. Linguist Dr. Pham Van Min has dedicated his career to decoding these ancient symbols. His analysis reveals recurring motifs that appear across different drums found throughout northern Vietnam. "We're looking at what may be Vietnam's oldest writing system," he explains, pointing to enlarged photographs of drum surfaces. The symbols follow grammatical patterns. They're not random art. They're language. Computer analysis has identified over 200 distinct symbolic elements that combine in ways consistent with syllabic writing systems, suggesting these drums may have functioned as both ceremonial objects and historical records. The mystery deepens when examining the linguistic roots of modern Vietnamese. Professor Nguyen Thi Mai, a comparative linguist at Hanoi National University, has identified Vietnamese words that appear to have no clear etymological origins in any known language family. These linguistic orphans, as she calls them, represent concepts fundamental to Vietnamese culture, yet seem to spring from no identifiable source. It's as if certain words in Vietnamese preserve fragments of a much older language, she notes. Words for spiritual concepts, astronomical phenomena, and advanced technologies that predate known Vietnamese contact with these ideas. The implications suggest that Vietnamese may carry within its vocabulary the remnants of a sophisticated prehistoric civilization. Sound itself carries strange power in Vietnamese spiritual traditions. Ancient temples were built to resonate, chambers tuned to human voice frequencies that amplify chants into standing waves. At the Temple of the Jade Emperor in Ho Chi Minh City, acoustic engineer Dr. Lê Thanh Tung has documented how the architecture creates specific harmonic frequencies when traditional prayers are chanted. The temple functions as a massive resonator, he explains. Certain tonal combinations produce standing waves that affect brain activity, inducing meditative states. Perhaps the ancients understood that language was not only meaning, but vibration, a bridge between mind and matter. The Vietnamese language's unique tonal system, with its 6 distinct tones, may preserve an even older understanding of sound's power. Dr. Vu Thi Ngoc, studying traditional Vietnamese music therapy, has found that specific tonal patterns can influence heart rate, blood pressure, and neurological activity. The 6 tones aren't arbitrary, she observes. They correspond to frequencies that resonate with human physiology in measurable ways. Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the discovery of what linguists call Proto-Vietnamese inscriptions found in caves throughout northern Vietnam. These primitive symbols, estimated to be over 3,000 years old, show remarkable consistency across widely separated locations. Dr. Hoang Van Thai, who leads the Cave Inscription Project, describes them as a writing system waiting to be born. The symbols combine pictographic and ideographic elements in ways that suggest sophisticated abstract thinking. These cave dwellers weren't just recording hunts or marking territory, he explains. They were preserving complex ideas about time, spirit, and cosmic order. Modern Vietnamese still carries echoes of this ancient understanding. When traditional healers chant therapeutic mantras, when farmers sing to their rice fields, when mothers sing lullabies that have been passed down for generations, they participate in an unbroken chain of vibrational knowledge that extends back to humanity's earliest attempts to speak with the universe itself. Language was never just communication, it was creation. And maybe that's what we've forgotten, that words are alive. The first languages spoke to the stars not because they described them, but because they resonated with them. But if language preserves ancient wisdom, what about the people who first spoke it? What secrets might lie buried not in words alone, but in the very bones of those who came before. There is a story buried beneath our feet, not in books, but in bone. The earth keeps its own archive, a library of skeletons pressed into stone and soil. We are taught that human evolution is a gradual progression from small to tall, primitive to advanced. Yet sometimes the ground yields evidence that doesn't quite fit the script. Massive femurs, elongated skulls, jaws large enough to suggest beings far different from modern humans. Most are dismissed, mislabeled, or quietly lost. But once in a while, one escapes the silence, and for a moment, the illusion of a tidy history trembles. In the limestone caves of northern Vietnam, paleoanthropologist Dr. Tran Thi Huong has spent 2 decades unearthing human remains that challenge conventional understanding of Southeast Asian prehistory. Her team's discoveries in Ha Long Bay's hidden caverns reveal skeletal fragments that suggest remarkable physical diversity among ancient Vietnamese populations. We're finding bone structures that don't match modern human proportions, Dr. Tran explains, carefully handling a femur that measures nearly 20% longer than contemporary specimens. Some of these remains suggest individuals who would have stood well over 7 feet tall. The dating is equally puzzling. Carbon analysis places these remains between 8,000 and 12,000 years old, making them contemporaneous with the end of the last ice age. But their physical characteristics suggest a level of robust development that seems inconsistent with the supposed hunter-gatherer lifestyle of the period. Dr. Nguyen Minh Khai, a forensic anthropologist collaborating on the project, describes bone density measurements that exceed modern athletic standards. Even more intriguing are the cultural artifacts found alongside these remains. Tools carved from materials not found locally, jewelry made from metals that require sophisticated smelting techniques, and most puzzling of all, carved tablets bearing symbols that predate known Vietnamese writing systems by millennia. Dr. Lê Thi Puong, the project's archaeological coordinator, has documented burial practices that suggest these ancient people possessed advanced understanding of anatomy and preservation. The positioning of the bodies, the selection of burial goods, the careful arrangement of stones around the graves, all indicate a sophisticated mortuary culture, she explains. Traditional Vietnamese folklore may preserve memories of these ancient peoples. The legends speak of the Ngoi Kong Lo, giant beings who once ruled the northern mountains before disappearing into the mists of time. Ethnic minority groups throughout northern Vietnam, particularly the Hmong and Thai peoples, maintain oral traditions describing encounters between their ancestors and a race of tall, powerful beings who possessed knowledge of metalworking, agriculture, and astronomy. These aren't recent stories influenced by modern media, but ancient narratives passed down through generations, complete with specific geographic references and detailed descriptions of the giants' appearance and abilities. Modern genetic analysis adds another layer to the mystery. Dr. Pham Thi Lan, a molecular anthropologist at Vietnam National University, has been studying DNA extracted from these ancient remains. Her preliminary findings reveal genetic markers that don't appear in modern Southeast Asian populations. We're seeing allelic variations that suggest these individuals possessed genetic adaptations we don't find today, she explains. Enhanced bone density, increased muscle attachment points, and metabolic efficiency that would have allowed for larger body mass without the health complications we'd expect. Even more puzzling, some of these genetic markers show similarities to DNA found in ancient remains from widely separated geographic regions, including the Denisovan populations of Siberia and the mysterious early humans of the Pacific Islands. This suggests that ancient Vietnam may have been home to populations with genetic heritage from multiple archaic human lineages. It's as if these people were genetic bridges, Dr. Pham notes, connecting human populations that mainstream anthropology says should never have met. The mystery deepens when considering the abrupt disappearance of these populations from the archaeological record. Around 8,000 years ago, the distinctive burial sites and oversized remains simply stop appearing in northern Vietnam's cave systems. No evidence of warfare, disease, or gradual cultural change. Just silence. Dr. Vu Van Han, studying the environmental conditions of this period, has found evidence of dramatic climate shifts coinciding with this disappearance. We see signs of massive flooding, ash deposits suggesting volcanic activity, and even possible meteor impact debris in the geological layers from this time, he reports. Perhaps the giants didn't simply fade away through natural selection or cultural assimilation. Perhaps they were swept away by the same cataclysmic forces that ended the Ice Age and reshaped the coastlines of Southeast Asia. Their knowledge, their genetic heritage, and their cultural achievements may have been preserved only in fragments, scattered among the survivors who inherited a world transformed by cosmic forces beyond human control. As I imagine those massive bones beneath layers of limestone and time, I wonder if they're still there, listening. The earth holds them close, heavy with memory, patient as stone. But sometimes, when the monsoon rains soak deep into the mountain caves, something stirs. A reminder that the story of humanity may be far taller than we ever dreamed. Sometimes the end does not come from below, it falls from the sky. For as long as the earth has turned, fire has rained upon it. The ancients remembered this not as metaphor but as memory. The day when stars fell, when the heavens burned red, when gods hurled lightning and mountains melted. We find their stories scattered across Vietnam's highlands, telling of a time when the sky itself descended to erase what had been built. It is easy to dismiss such tales as myth until we look at the scars on the land. In the remote mountains of northern Vietnam, geologist Dr. Nguyen Thanh Hai has spent years studying what he calls impact signatures in the geological record. His surveys have documented layers of shocked quartz, microscopic diamonds, and platinum anomalies that appear in sedimentary deposits dating to approximately 10,000 years ago. These are the fingerprints of cosmic collision, Dr. Nguyen explains, examining core samples that tell a story of unimaginable violence. Something struck this region with enough force to alter the molecular structure of rock itself. The evidence is subtle but consistent across multiple sites. At Sapa, in the high mountain passes where ancient trade routes once connected Vietnam to China, Dr. Lê Minh Hung has found spherules of melted rock embedded in cave walls. These tiny glass beads form only under conditions of extreme heat and pressure, temperatures that exceed anything produced by volcanic activity. We're looking at evidence of an airburst, Dr. Lê explains, a cosmic object that exploded in the atmosphere with the force of thousands of nuclear weapons. Ancient Vietnamese texts may preserve memories of this catastrophe in symbolic form. The Jai Viet Su Ki Tuan Thu, Vietnam's most comprehensive historical chronicle, contains references to a period called Tien Hoa, literally heaven fire, when the sky burned for 7 days and nights. Dr. Hoang Van Thanh, a specialist in classical Vietnamese literature, has identified similar descriptions in folk poetry and religious texts. The consistency is remarkable, he notes. Across different regions and time periods, we find the same imagery: fire falling from the sky, mountains shaking, waters boiling. The Hmong and other highland ethnic groups maintain even more detailed oral traditions about this ancient disaster. Their creation myths speak of a time when the sky cracked open and burning stones fell like rain, forcing their ancestors to hide in deep caves until the fury passed. Elder Vong Seo Su of the Hmong Cultural Institute has documented these stories across dozens of mountain villages. Our grandparents' grandparents remembered, he explains. They sang songs about the night the stars fell down and changed the shape of the world forever. Physical evidence supports these ancient memories. In the limestone karst regions of Ha Long Bay, Dr. Tran Thieng Nga has discovered what she terms vitrification sites, where rock has been melted and reformed into glass-like substances. These formations require temperatures exceeding 1,700 degrees Celsius, far beyond what natural processes could generate. The melting patterns suggest intense heat from above, Dr. Tran reports, as if something in the sky focused enormous energy onto specific locations. Similar vitrified formations appear in other parts of northern Vietnam, always associated with hilltops and elevated terrain that would have been exposed to aerial phenomena. Carbon dating of charcoal deposits found near these vitrification sites consistently points to the same time period, approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. This coincides with the end of the Pleistocene epoch and massive climate changes that transformed Southeast Asia. Dr. Pham Quang Minh, studying the environmental impact of this period, has found evidence of massive forest fires, sudden temperature spikes, and atmospheric disturbances that suggest a catastrophic event of unprecedented scale. Whatever happened during this period reset the entire ecosystem of northern Vietnam, he concludes. Perhaps most intriguing are the astronomical calculations performed by Dr. Vu Thi Han at Vietnam's National Space Center. Her analysis of comet and asteroid orbital patterns suggests that approximately 11,000 years ago, Earth passed through a debris field from a disintegrating comet. The mathematical models show multiple impact events over several decades, she explains, not a single catastrophe, but a cosmic bombardment that would have appeared to ancient observers as the sky literally falling. This matches remarkably well with both the geological evidence and the oral traditions of repeated star falls over an extended period. The survivors of this cosmic catastrophe would have been profoundly changed by the experience. Those who endured would have carried not only traumatic memories, but perhaps genetic adaptations that allowed them to survive radiation, atmospheric disturbances, and environmental chaos. They would have been the founders of new lineages, bearing within their blood the resilience of those who witnessed the end of one world and the beginning of another. But who were these survivors? What distinguished them from those who perished? And how did their extraordinary heritage shape the civilizations that followed? History, it seems, never dies. It reincarnates in blood. Long after temples crumble and languages vanish, memory travels quietly through lineage. It hides in the veins of families, in rituals, in symbols passed hand to hand across generations. Each civilization leaves not only ruins, but inheritors, guardians of knowledge who carry fragments of a forgotten order. The ancients spoke often of sacred bloodlines, kings who were more than men, priests who were born to remember, and initiates who bore within them the residue of a greater ancestry. The Vietnamese imperial dynasties maintained sophisticated genealogical records that trace royal bloodlines back over 2 millennia. Dr. Giao Thi Minh, Vietnam's leading expert on dynastic histories, has spent decades studying these imperial chronicles. Her research reveals patterns that challenge conventional understanding of Vietnamese monarchy. The succession wasn't just political, she explains from the Imperial Archives in Hue. It followed genetic principles that suggest the royal families believed certain traits were hereditary, not just leadership ability, but what they called Tien Men, divine mandate that resided in the blood itself. The Lý dynasty, which ruled Vietnam for over 2 centuries beginning in 10,009 CE, claimed descent from the legendary Lac Long Quan, the Dragon King of Vietnamese mythology. But these weren't merely symbolic claims. Court records describe physical characteristics and abilities that were said to distinguish the royal bloodline. Dr. Nguyen Van Hung, studying these medieval documents, has found references to enhanced longevity, unusual physical resilience, and what court chroniclers called dragon sight, the ability to perceive patterns and connections invisible to ordinary people. Modern genetic analysis offers intriguing insights into these ancient claims. Dr. Lê Thi Nga, a molecular geneticist at Ho Chi Minh City University of Medicine, has been studying DNA samples from royal tomb excavations with the permission of Vietnam's cultural heritage authorities. Her preliminary findings reveal genetic markers that appear in significantly higher frequencies among individuals from documented royal lineages. We're seeing allelic variations associated with enhanced cognitive function, improved stress response, and increased resistance to certain diseases, she reports. It's as if these bloodlines were indeed genetically distinct from the general population. Even more mysterious are the genetic connections Dr. Lê has discovered between Vietnamese royal families and other ancient ruling dynasties across Southeast Asia. DNA analysis reveals shared genetic markers with Khmer royalty, Cham nobility, and even traces that connect to the mysterious Funan civilization that flourished in the Mekong Delta over 1,500 years ago. These aren't random genetic drift patterns, Dr. Lê explains. The similarities are too specific, too consistent. It suggests deliberate preservation of certain genetic lineages across vast geographic and temporal distances. Beyond royal bloodlines, Vietnam's spiritual traditions also speak of hereditary gifts passed through family lines. The Giao Mao religion, centered on goddess worship and spirit mediumship, maintains that the ability to commune with spiritual realms is often inherited. Dr. Pham Thi Han, an anthropologist studying traditional Vietnamese religious practices, has documented families where shamanic abilities appear across multiple generations. It's not just cultural transmission, she observes. The practitioners themselves insist that certain bloodlines carry what they call Lin Qi, spiritual energy that enables communication with ancestral spirits. Modern neuroscience adds an unexpected dimension to these traditional beliefs. Dr. Tran Van Duong, a neurogeneticist at Vietnam National University, has identified genetic variations associated with enhanced pattern recognition, heightened sensory perception, and increased activity in brain regions linked to intuitive processing. Some of these variants appear with higher frequency in families with documented histories of spiritual leadership, he reports. Whether this represents genuine psychic ability or simply enhanced cognitive processing, the genetic component appears real. These bloodlines may indeed carry inherited traits that distinguish them from the general population. The implications extend far beyond individual families. If certain genetic lineages do carry enhanced capabilities, whether cognitive, spiritual, or physical, then the systematic preservation of these bloodlines across centuries suggests ancient Vietnamese civilization possessed sophisticated understanding of heredity and genetics. Dr. Hoang Thi Lan, studying the social structures of ancient Vietnamese kingdoms, has found evidence of deliberate marriage practices designed to concentrate and preserve specific genetic traits. The royal marriage customs weren't just political alliances, she explains. They followed patterns consistent with selective breeding for desired characteristics. Perhaps most intriguingly, genetic analysis of modern Vietnamese populations reveals that virtually everyone carries some trace of these ancient lineages. The sacred blood may not belong to a privileged few, but represent a collective inheritance scattered throughout the entire population. As we awaken to our genetic heritage, we may discover that the divine bloodlines never disappeared. They simply dispersed, waiting to be remembered. But if such knowledge was once common, why was it hidden? What forces drove the keepers of ancient wisdom to conceal their most precious secrets? And where might those secrets still lie, guarded by silence and stone? Every civilization has its vault, a place where what must be remembered and what must be forgotten are kept together, indistinguishable in the dark. The deeper one studies Vietnamese history, the clearer it becomes that knowledge itself has always been a form of power, and power requires control. Not everything humanity once knew was lost by accident. Some truths were sealed away deliberately, hidden under stone, under code, under silence. The forbidden archives exist not in one place, but everywhere. The guardians of knowledge have chosen to erase, to rewrite, or to keep. Within the ancient imperial citadel of Thăng Long, beneath layers of modern Hanoi, archaeologists have discovered a network of underground chambers that extends far beyond the visible palace foundations. Dr. Vu Thi Lan, leading the excavation project, describes corridors that stretch for kilometers beneath the city, connecting temples, administrative buildings, and residential areas in a vast subterranean complex. "We're finding evidence of a hidden city beneath the historical one," she explains, examining stone passages carved with precision that rivals modern engineering. But most puzzling are the sealed chambers, rooms that were deliberately walled off, their contents protected by meters of stone. Official oversight of these excavations remains strict. The Vietnamese Ministry of Culture maintains tight control over access to the underground sites, citing structural safety and cultural preservation concerns. Dr. Tran Minh Duc, an independent archaeologist who has applied repeatedly for research permits, describes a pattern of bureaucratic delays and restricted access. "There's clearly more down there than they're willing to acknowledge," he notes. "The question is, what are they protecting, and from whom?" The pattern of knowledge suppression in Vietnam extends far beyond modern bureaucracy. During the French colonial period, systematic efforts were made to collect and remove Vietnamese historical documents, particularly those dealing with pre-colonial science, astronomy, and engineering. Dr. Lê Thi My, a historian specializing in colonial documentation practices, has traced thousands of manuscripts that were shipped to French libraries and private collections between 1884 and 1954. The colonizers weren't just interested in political control, she explains from her research office at the National Library. They systematically identified and removed texts that demonstrated advanced Vietnamese knowledge in fields the French wanted to claim as exclusively European innovations. Many of these confiscated documents have never been returned to Vietnam. The Bibliothèque Nationale de France alone holds over 3,000 Vietnamese manuscripts in restricted collections. Dr. Nguyen Van Than, who has spent years attempting to catalog these holdings, describes texts on metallurgy, hydraulic engineering, and astronomical calculation that predate similar European developments by centuries. We're talking about technical manuals, mathematical treatises, and scientific observations that would revolutionize our understanding of medieval Vietnamese civilization, he notes. But accessing them requires navigating layers of bureaucracy that seem designed to discourage inquiry. Even in the digital age, the pattern of selective access continues. Dr. Pham Thi Hong, a digital archivist working to preserve Vietnamese cultural heritage, has encountered mysterious gaps in official databases. Ancient texts that appear in catalog listings simply cannot be located for digitization. We have references to documents, descriptions of their contents, even partial translations, she explains. But the originals have vanished from official collections. It's as if someone is curating what gets preserved and what disappears into administrative limbo. Traditional temple archives present another layer of hidden knowledge. Many Buddhist pagodas and Confucian temples throughout Vietnam maintain private collections of ancient texts passed down through generations of monks and scholars. Dr. Lê Văn Hung, studying these religious archives, has been granted access to manuscripts that never appear in official historical records. The temples preserved what the imperial courts and colonial authorities either ignored or actively suppressed, he observes. Texts on traditional medicine, astronomical observation, and spiritual practices that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of natural phenomena. Some temple guardians speak quietly of even deeper archives, collections kept in underground chambers accessible only to initiated scholars. Elder Thich Minh An of Truc Lam Temple describes manuscripts written on materials that don't appear to age, techniques of preservation that seem to transcend normal understanding of organic decay. Our ancestors knew things about preserving knowledge that we've forgotten, he explains. Not just the knowledge itself, but how to keep it alive across centuries without degradation. The question haunts every researcher working on Vietnamese historical mysteries. How much has been deliberately concealed, and why? Each discovery seems to reveal not answers, but evidence of deeper questions that someone, somewhere, decided were too dangerous to pursue. Dr. Hoang Thị, studying patterns of knowledge suppression across different historical periods, sees a common thread. Every time Vietnamese civilization approaches a certain level of revelation about its ancient past, external forces intervene to redirect or suppress the inquiry, she observes, as if the truth itself threatens some carefully maintained narrative. Perhaps the real forbidden archive isn't a place at all, but a state of awareness we're not yet ready to enter. Beneath the rubble of fallen dynasties, beneath the centuries of silence, something ancient still breathes. It waits, patient and unseen, in the cracks between our discoveries and our denials. We call it mystery, but perhaps it is memory, the slow awakening of a truth that cannot stay buried forever. Every age believes itself the first to awaken, but the earth knows better. What is buried is never lost. What sleeps in dust will one day open its eyes again. Vietnamese archaeologists speak quietly of accelerating discoveries, ancient sites emerging from jungle growth, new chambers revealed by flooding, inscriptions uncovered by construction projects that halt when workers realize what they've found. Dr. Pham Van Long, coordinator of Vietnam's National Heritage Protection Program, describes a pattern that seems almost intentional. It's as if the land itself has decided it's time, he observes. Every year brings revelations that push our understanding of Vietnamese civilization deeper into the past. Climate change may be the ultimate revealer of secrets. As sea levels shift and monsoon patterns change, archaeological sites once protected by water or vegetation are becoming exposed. Dr. Nguyen Thi Han, studying the effects of environmental change on cultural preservation, has documented dozens of newly revealed sites across the Mekong Delta. Nature is doing archaeology's work for us, she notes. What was hidden is becoming visible. Satellite imaging reveals geometric patterns beneath rice paddies, foundations of structures that predate known settlements, evidence of a Vietnam far more complex and ancient than textbooks suggest. The emergence extends beyond physical artifacts to consciousness itself. Across Vietnam, there's a growing movement of young people reconnecting with traditional spiritual practices that their grandparents had abandoned during decades of modernization. Dr. Vu Thi Lan, studying contemporary Vietnamese spiritual movements, describes a phenomenon that transcends simple nostalgia. They're not just learning old rituals, she explains. They're rediscovering capabilities that seem to have been dormant in the population. Enhanced intuitive abilities, sensitivity to natural rhythms, even reports of spontaneous understanding of ancient symbols. Vietnamese universities are quietly beginning to integrate traditional knowledge systems with modern scientific research. At Vietnam National University, Dr. Tran Minh Hai leads a groundbreaking interdisciplinary program that combines archaeology, genetics, and consciousness studies. We're finding that ancient Vietnamese wisdom traditions contain sophisticated understanding of phenomena that Western science is only beginning to explore, he reports. The integration isn't just academic curiosity, it's revealing practical applications in medicine, agriculture, and environmental management that our ancestors took for granted. Perhaps most significantly, the generational transmission of knowledge is accelerating. Elderly practitioners who had kept traditional wisdom private are now sharing it openly with younger researchers. Dr. Lê Thi Nga describes a sense of urgency among these knowledge keepers. They feel that the time for secrecy has passed, she observes, as if some cosmic clock has reached a moment when the hidden must become visible. The convergence of scientific discovery and traditional wisdom is creating a new understanding of Vietnamese civilization that extends far beyond academic theory into practical transformation. The synthesis is producing unexpected insights. Ancient Vietnamese agricultural techniques, when analyzed through modern soil science, reveal sustainable farming methods that could address contemporary environmental challenges. Traditional healing practices, studied through molecular biology, show therapeutic mechanisms that surpass many synthetic pharmaceuticals. Astronomical knowledge preserved in temple architecture provides models for understanding cosmic cycles that correlate with climate patterns scientists are only beginning to recognize. Dr. Hoang Van Nam, leading Vietnam's newly established Institute for Traditional Knowledge Integration, sees these developments as part of a global awakening. Vietnam isn't unique in rediscovering its ancient wisdom, he explains, but our geographical position at the crossroads of ancient Asian civilizations means that what we're uncovering has implications far beyond our borders. International researchers are beginning to recognize that Vietnamese civilization may have been a crucial link in the preservation and transmission of knowledge that connects India, China, and the maritime cultures of Southeast Asia in ways that challenge existing historical models. The implications reach beyond academic understanding into contemporary identity. Vietnamese people are beginning to see themselves not as inheritors of a small Southeast Asian nation's history, but as descendants of a civilization whose influence may have shaped human development across vast regions and timescales. This shift in perspective is producing a cultural renaissance that combines pride in ancient heritage with innovative approaches to modern challenges. As the night deepens over the Red River Delta, where this journey began, the ancient and modern worlds seem to merge in the mist rising from rice fields that have been cultivated for millennia. The same stars that guided the builders of Ko Loa and the astronomers of the Li dynasty still wheel overhead, patient and eternal. In village temples, elders light incense for ancestors whose names have been forgotten, but whose presence seems as real as the flickering flame. Dr. Nguyen Thi Minh, reflecting on decades of archaeological discovery, speaks with quiet certainty. We're not uncovering the past, we're remembering the future. Everything our ancestors knew is still here, waiting for us to develop eyes capable of seeing it again. The Red River still flows, carrying its ancient secrets towards the sea. But now, perhaps for the first time in centuries, we're beginning to learn its language again. The awakening is not sudden. It unfolds like the slow light of morning across the face of stone. The myths we dismissed are returning as facts. The science we worship begins to sound like prayer. Between them, a bridge forms, delicate, luminous, unbreakable. The lost epoch is not only behind us, it is within us, waiting to be recalled through the quiet art of wonder. And so, as the ancient echoes fade into the gentle rhythm of your breathing, let the mysteries of the Dragonland settle softly around you, like morning mist over the Red River. The stones still remember. The stars still watch. The secrets we've explored tonight will wait patiently in your dreams, weaving themselves into the quiet tapestry of sleep. Close your eyes and feel the weight of 10,000 years flowing beneath your thoughts. Somewhere in the darkness, the builders of forgotten temples continue their work. Somewhere in the silence, the voices of ancient astronomers whisper calculations that align perfectly with your heartbeat. The giants sleep beneath the limestone caves, the underwater cities rest in their patient depths, and the sacred bloodlines flow quietly through the dreams of all who remember. You are part of this story now, connected to the endless cycle of forgetting and remembering, of questions asked and answers that drift like smoke through time. Let the vibration of ancient bronze drums match the rhythm of your pulse. Let the geometric precision of temple alignments guide you into perfect rest. The awakening we spoke of is not urgent. It unfolds in its own time, gentle as the turning of seasons. Tonight, you need only sleep, knowing that tomorrow the mysteries will still be there, waiting with infinite patience for the moment when you're ready to remember what you've always known. Sleep well. Dreamer, the dragons are watching over you, and the echoes of eternity will sing you safely through the night.